welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, I'm the senior editor here, and today I'm delighted once again to be joined by Zeus Kerravala, founder and principal analyst at ZK Research. Zeus, it's great to have you. How are you doing?
Thanks, Charlie. It's been a while. It's always good to be back on CX Today here.
Yeah, well, it's great to speak to you. As you're kind of you're a major figure within the CX industry now, and you speak a lot about CCaaS, and there's been some huge news coming out of CCaaS recently. And I think kind of the hottest news off the press really is Salesforce launching their Salesforce Contact Center solution. I know this is, as I said, really hot off the press, but I was wondering kind of if you had any kind of first initial impressions of the solution.
Yeah, people have been, I think, expecting this a while. There's an obvious, every contact center vendor integrates with Salesforce, and so there's an obvious adjacent play here for Salesforce, right, to be able to capture more of that revenue. I do think the impact of it, though, I don't know how big it'll be initially, though. The one thing I'll say about contact center is you talk to any contact center vendor, contact center, especially the voice part of it's not easy to do, right? And it takes years and years and years to build that experience. With that being said, though, Salesforce does have a lot of revenue, right? And so, for those that missed it, following an announcement of Contact Center Genie at Dreamforce 2022, Salesforce put out an additional press release with more information on its contact center. I think the pricing ended at $150 a month, and that includes a whole bunch of features such as service cloud voice, digital engagement, omni-channel routing. So it isn't just voice. There are some digital features in there. I think this to me is I think an indicator of things to come. I think we'll continue to see contact center vendors move in here. But I do think this is a good option for small businesses that are using Salesforce already. I don't necessarily believe this is going to impact the mid-market and large enterprise players, such as a NICE and a Five9. Those deployments tend to be very complicated. There's a lot of application integration that you have to do and things that Salesforce doesn't do very well. And I also think from a go-to-market perspective, Salesforce has to tread lightly here, right? Like every contact center vendor is their partner. And what they don't want to do is create a scenario where all those partners now flee and go support other CRM tools, right? Create other partnerships that actually wind up damaging Salesforce. So I think for Salesforce, there's a very obvious move into this market. I think they need to pick their spots carefully. I think if, like I said, in the small business segment, that does make some sense. And it's also interesting, Charlie, that what we call contact center today, really any tool that's used to talk to customers, in a lot of ways, people throw that in. I've heard people describe Zendesk and things as some contact center light and things. So clearly this CX economy that we're in is getting more and more vendors to try and jump into contact centers, but the definition is definitely expanding. The ways you can do it are definitely expanding, and I do think long term success for any company in this space is going to be based on this concept of co-opetition, right? Their ability to partner, but also maintain friendly relationships with companies they compete with.
Yeah, I think there's again lots of really great stuff there, and it'll be interesting to see kind of, as you said, it's mostly probably SMBs that will. Try and target this solutions, maybe try and...
and the price is $150 a month, right? So that's not at the low end, but it does include some traditional CRM things. So when you look at the higher end contact center vendors, their ARPU is higher than that, and there's a lot of other advanced features you get in the areas of AI and things like that Salesforce doesn't have today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting space just with the amount of vendors, as you alluded to as well, that are just entering it at the moment. I mean, CRM vendors, there's also kind of traditional UCaaS vendors with Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft through Teams, obviously. I think it's a really interesting space. And another company that is entering it is Google. As we said, they've made their solution generally available now, their contact center AI platform. This has kind of been in the works for a while. Too, but I was kind of wondering what your impressions, first impressions of this new solution are?
Yeah, Google's a fascinating company because in a lot of ways, they have more resources than anybody, right? I mean, except maybe Amazon and Apple or something, but certainly they're up there with it. But because their business is so skewed to search, a lot of times I don't know how serious Google is about a lot of the enterprise business. Like, if Google were to come out and take 10% of the CCaaS seats, right, I don't think that really moves the needle at Google, right? Just given the overall, size of their business. And so when you look at anything Google's ever done in business, whether it's the Google Apps Suite, Google Mail, Google Chat, right, whatever, historically, they've never really invested the resources in it to make a strong go of it. It winds up being adopted by some small companies. It winds up being adopted by companies that really despise Microsoft, things like that. And so it winds up being kind of this option for companies that are looking for an alternative because they're really frustrated with their incumbent. And I don't, and they're always half into things, right? I think we've all been waiting for Google to become a more serious UC player. In fact, I think for 4 or 5 years in a row, one of my predictions was always this is the year that Google's going to make a run at UC, and they don't. And I think when it comes to contact center, and Microsoft's going to have this problem too as they try and build out their contact center, you can't deliver a good enough product, right? This is, for many organizations, their main lifeline into their customers. And it has to work, it has to be reliable, it has to have all the bells and features, and you can't deliver a half-baked product. And Google's made a history of being able to deliver, half-baked products that are kind of okay, that have a certain set of features. And you look at the app suite, right? They've been working on apps for a while, but they don't get used by serious document people because they're missing a bunch of advanced features in Excel and Word and PowerPoint and things. And so they do a good job, and I think they will have some success in the small market when you just need kind of a light set of features. But as soon as you need to do anything advanced, Google tends to always fall down.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the kind of the prediction, as you said, of Google are going to become this UCaaS player kind of year after year, and it never really happened. I hope that they don't follow through CCaaS. They are partnered with UJet, which is potentially interesting. But
yes,
but yeah.
In fact, that's sort of an interesting proof point itself. Like, if they were more serious about it, why didn't they just buy UJet?
Yeah,
right. So
anybody has
because they certainly have the resources, and I think maybe this could be an interesting step along the way. Try it before you buy it. But Google, again, with the resources they have, they don't really need to take that approach. So to me, if Google really was serious about this, they'd go out and, they could roll up a UJet, a TalkDesk, whoever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be interesting to see that kind of progression in the space. They've also done some stuff with BI through, and some new voice innovation as well. So in CX, it's going to be interesting because they're still kind of on the precipice, I guess, but it'll be interesting to see if they delve deeper into a lot of
Google's on the precipice of a lot of things. So
yeah.
we'll see if they ever get one right. So in fact, I've talked to former Google executives there, and they've admitted that it's hard to get people at the top of Google to look at a lot of the enterprise business because the search business is so big, and because it's so hard to move the needle at Google today with anything but search, right?
Yeah. I think that's a very good point, and it'd be interesting to see where they do kind of go on from here. But I think Salesforce and Google are the two very interesting brands to look out for. One that we've been looking at, another one which I just quickly want to mention is WebEx, because kind of they were on the precipice, but they've actually come in and really actually doing quite a good job in the CCaaS industry in the past couple of years since they entered it. I know you were at their WebEx 1 conference, and there were quite a few CCaaS announcements. I don't know if you have any particular highlights that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I wish WebEx had jumped in, really gotten on board with CCaaS earlier. I think they had invested so much money in their HCS offerings and BroadSoft and things like that. I think that distracted them for a while. I think the new leadership there under G2 and Patel and Javed Khan have actually done a very good job of building up their CCaaS portfolio. So at WebEx 1, they did announce, delivering an omni-channel and a best-in-class experience is one of their 4 key priorities for collaboration. And they announced a number of new features there. They're bringing their AI-based noise reduction, which is in their WebEx suite already, to contact centers. Of course, in this era of hybrid work where you have agents working at home, I've been on calls with contact center agents where it's clear they're working at home, right? And so this allows them, agents to do that, but eliminated a lot of the, lawnmowers and kids and things that you have in the background. They added more and more channels. So they have the companies now can use Google Business Messenger, and actually one of the interesting integrations with this was with Instagram. And Instagram has become a very viable channel to do e-commerce through, and it's a great way to reach customers. I personally, I'm a big cyclist and things like that. I can't tell you how many cycling and golf promos I get pushed through Instagram, and I've actually bought I shouldn't say this because now advertising is going to push more into me, but I've actually bought quite a few through it, and so I think that's a really interesting integration. And I do think that Cisco built out its contact center the right way. It could have short-circuited by maybe acquiring one, but they wanted to make sure it was cloud native. And this is an underappreciated aspect of the contact center industry, Charlie, because when you look at a lot of the older CCaaS vendors, they're not really cloud native per se, right? They're big monolithic platforms that they're, Five9, for instance, spent years trying to migrate to cloud native, right? And I think once you're cloud native, though, it's very easy to be able to drop in new services, right? If you look at in fact, the Jitex Avaya demonstrated metaverse integration. And when I was talking with the team over there, they said, well, we're cloud native. And now it just becomes another channel. And I think similarly with Cisco, with WebEx, being able to add in Instagram as a channel was actually, fairly easy. They also now have a contact center, back to Cisco, certified with Microsoft Teams. And so you can route Teams calls and through it and stuff. And that's another interesting play for Cisco. Is Cisco, I think, has finally gotten to the point where they're not trying to win the whole pie, with an admission that Microsoft's going to be in accounts. Microsoft treats unified communications and contact center almost like a feature of Office, right? And so you just get it. But I think Cisco now is trying to make the Teams experience a better experience than Teams can. And there is some precedent for that. Like if you look at Box, right? Box does document management better for Microsoft apps than Microsoft does, right? So, it's a strategy that other user vendors have used before. But I think my biggest takeaway from WebEx One is, especially in this space, is that they've had some good momentum in CCaaS. Cisco kind of danced around it for a long time, but they're here now, and this is their primary go-to-market model now.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember you also told me before about how Cisco, they could have short-circuited it in a way and kind of revamped their BroadSoft technology, but they went the full native model, and hopefully now they'll secure some of the benefits from that. I also think the Microsoft Cisco relationship that's brewing now is quite an interesting one. I don't know what that means for the competition, but I'm sure.
It does have a lot of interesting potential because, Cisco is the biggest network vendor. They've got more devices than everybody. In fact, I talked with some Microsoft folks at UC Expo, and they're really excited about the device integration because they said, Cisco flat out makes the best devices. They're very well. I mean, they're expensive, but they're very well built. The quality is great. The audio is great. The video is great. And so to be able to bring that to Teams is actually good for Teams, right? So, I think it took the industry a long time to get here, Charlie, but openness, interoperability drives usage, right? And you look across any technology stack, openness and interoperability drives usage. And this is something that the communications industry has really lacked. And because everybody wanted everything, right? They wanted to have calling, messaging, meetings, contact center. Everybody wanted the whole stack. And I think, if you can create a rising tide and get a piece of the pie, that's generally going to be better for your business than holding the industry back and getting the whole pie.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I guess no vendor is an island. I think it's an interesting relationship to look for, and kind of how Microsoft itself develops out, especially from its UCaaS solution. I think that's just the kind of whole landscape actually is really fascinating right now. We could also talk about lots of other stories, such as Genesis ditched a multi-cloud solution. Five9 have a new CEO. It all seems to be brewing. But I won't take up much more of your time, Zeus, but it's been a
Well,
fascinating
there's no
conversation.
shortage of activity in the CCaaS space, and I think part of that again, Charlie, is just that customer experience has become the top brand differentiator for most companies. The contact center is where a lot of those customer experiences start. And this has created this big wave of innovation and change within companies. And so, the vendor community. And I think ultimately this is good for customers, right? This is the big thing that I think maybe we don't talk about enough is all this change is driving innovation faster. And that's good for customers because they're going to get, the competitiveness just makes everybody innovate faster, and so more customers will get more features faster with which they can use to change the way they interact with their customers.
Absolutely, I think increasing interoperability and how this competition will also, as you say, accelerate innovation is going to be particularly interesting to look out for. And it's always fascinating to talk to you, Zeus. I'm sure we could talk on and on and on, but I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing your thoughts on Salesforce, Google, and WebEx.
All right. Well, thanks, Charlie. And we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks again, and thank you all for watching.